guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and you guys know I love layer cakes, a latte. They're my favorite pre-cut, so we're gonna jump right in and I'm gonna show you our brand new free pattern, Layer Cake Latte. Your first step is to visit Fat Quarter Shop and download the free Layer Cake Latte pattern. This pattern uses one print layer cake and one solid layer cake. The pattern has size options for crib, lap, twin, and queen. I'm gonna go through the lap instructions today. If you don't have a solid layer cake for your background, all you have to do is cut 10-inch squares from some yardage and you'll be ready to go. I'm using the Jelly and Jam fabric by Fig Tree Quilts. These bright colors boost my mood just like my drink of choice, a Starbucks iced tea. Let me know in the comments what your favorite drink is, coffee, tea, energy, whatever you like to sip on, and we can start sewing. So I'm first going to show you how you cut your print layer cake. I'm going to be using the Perfect 10 layer cake since it's the size of a layer cake. I did want to mention that we have starched our fabrics. When we starch our fabrics, one side will be 10 inches and one side will actually shrink half an inch and be 9.5 inches. So you might need to pay attention to that on the background, which I will cover. But what we're going to do is we're going to cut 2 4-inch squares first, because on this ruler all we use is the inch marks and the half-inch marks, and that's all we need for this pattern. So it's actually really easy to see. When you're cutting your 4-inch pieces, you don't have to worry about the 3/4 inch line or anything like that. So we have 2 4-inch squares, which are going to be our fabric A's. For our fabric B, we're going to cut 2 3.5-inch squares. And this piece, what I would do is put it in your scrap bin and just save it for a future project. And so 3.5 plus 3.5 is 7. So I will just cut the 7-inch first. And then I will cut the 3.5. And these will be my fabric B's. We'll label those and put those on a design board. Then I'm going to show you my background, and the background is the one that we have to pay attention to if you starch. So we need to cut a 3.5 by 9.5 inch rectangle, and we can get that from this width, but you can see this width is shorter, so we don't want to use that one because it's shorter. So let's cut that first. Let's cut a 3.5 by 9.5 inch rectangle using your longest side if you starched. If you didn't starch, it really doesn't matter. So 3.5. And then we'll trim this to 9.5. And this one is going to be your fabric D. So we'll put that there. And then I will do 2 more 4-inch squares. And those will be going with my fabric A's. And these, when I cut them, will be my fabric C's. So when you're using a Bella Solid, whether it's the layer cake or yardage, there isn't a right or wrong side. So when you're sewing, you don't have to worry about that like you would with a print. So we're going to start with our half square triangles. I'm going to take a fabric A and a fabric C. I'm going to put those right sides together. And obviously on the solid, you can just ignore that. I'm going to use the Creative Grid Seam Guide. And what that's going to do is if I line up the center of this ruler, it's going to make a line on each side a 1/4 inch away. Or you could use a regular ruler, draw a line in the center, and then draw a line a 1/4 inch away. Either way, whatever is your preference. From there, you're going to sew on these 2 outside lines, and that's what it's going to look like with this dark thread. When we make this quilt, we're going to either use a white or cream thread. This we use blue just so we could show you. And that center line, you're going to cut. You're going to press this towards your fabric A, and it's going to come out a little bit bigger, and you're going to want to trim that down. After you cut that apart, I'm going to take this, I'm going to press towards the red. I'm going to use the Perfect 10 ruler, put the diagonal line of the ruler right on that seam, cut 2 sides, rotate your block or your unit, use the 3.5 inch lines, and trim this. Now, depending on which size you're making will determine how many of these you make. For the size we're doing, we're going to make 144. Now what you're going to do is take a fabric B, 2 matching half square triangles, and we're going to make an espresso unit. and it's going to look like this. You're gonna make 72. But what I wanted to point out is if you're somebody who saves all your leftover half square triangles and you have a lot of 3.5 inch unfinished half square triangles, you can make this a scrappy block and build up the quilt over a long period of time. So now you're gonna take this one, you're gonna take another espresso unit, and they look exactly the same, but what we wanna do is rotate that so your seams will nest and it looks the same rotated. Then you're gonna add a fabric D rectangle, and when you put these together, you can see that the seams nest by rotating that. So you can just feel it and see if your seams nest. You're gonna use a 1/4 inch seam right here, put that together, and this is going to be your cappuccino unit. So we move from making an espresso unit to a cappuccino unit. Now we're gonna take 4 cappuccino units and make a latte block. So like I said, you're gonna take 4 of these blocks, you're gonna rotate them, and when you rotate them, you can pay attention to where your white is. So you're gonna sew these together, all your seams will nest, you're gonna sew with a 1/4 inch seam, press according to the pattern, and then sew your final seam, and I'm gonna show you how your block looks. It's beautiful, and it finishes at 18 inches, and it's unfinished at 18.5 inches. And again, this would make a wonderful scrappy quilt. You can see the matching fabrics here. You can see how you could just make this totally scrappy and change it up. So now you can see when we laid out our block, all of our blocks touch and there isn't any type of sashing that goes between them, but if you follow our cutting and our pressing, all of your seams will nest, and you can see how beautiful this would be scrappy. For this pantograph quilting, we chose the blood orange peel pantograph. It's an orange peel that's turned vertical and horizontal with a little circle in between those. The curves balance out all of the triangle points, and it matches the happy vibe of the quilt. The thread we used is white to match the background solid of the quilt, and it blends really nicely with our backing. Let me know what you think of the Layer Cake Latte, and also let me know if you're gonna make this scrappy or as planned. I can't wait to see you on next Friday's live stream, and make sure to subscribe.